Hello, Cyclone football fans. My name is Luke Manderfeld, sports editor at the Iowa State Daily and football reporter. I'm here with Brian Mozey, football reporter. We just got done covering the first spring practice of the year. ISU head coach Matt Campbell's first spring football practice with his new staff. It was pretty exciting. Music was actually playing, which I hear that was not the case with Paul Rhodes last year.
A lot of guys were actually liking it. A lot of the football players were getting into it.
Some of the wide receivers were doing a little dance, some little moves out there, popping some moves. But there's some interesting things to talk about with the spring season. It's going to mold how the team's going to go into the fall. Obviously, the first thing to talk about, I think, is just generally Matt Campbell didn't release a depth chart for spring football, which is not a common thing around college football. Last year, Paul Rhodes released one. But he explained it's just because they're kind of starting from not square one with the offensive line, he said, but they're just kind of like evaluating everyone. And with the new coaching staff, I don't think you can blame him on that. But so he just said the depth chart they have now is more of like a rep chart. So a lot of the players, they're not really looking at the depth chart yet. So if we're talking about the depth chart, I think one aspect of it is going to be the offensive line. It's the lack of depth there. There's only one returning starter, which is Jay Campos, and he is out for the spring drills Matt Campbell said he might come back, but he has a hip injury right now. He had some surgery to clean up some of the hip problems he had last season, and he looked good. He was out there on the field doing some exercises. He just isn't on the field, but that's a big blow for spring football, I guess, just because they don't have they're probably their most experienced offensive lineman, maybe their best offensive lineman on the field, helping out. But like I said before, Matt Campbell said he might get some reps at the end of practice, at the end of spring football, which would be helpful. But so offensive line, it's going to start with square one. Campbell said earlier today, so they're gonna evaluate everyone. Nick Fett, who's a walk-on, played a little bit last season. He's going to get some looks. J.P. Filbert played a little bit last season as well. He'll get some looks. And Patrick Scoggins, the center who got injured last year and lost his whole season, will get some looks. And then there's some incoming offensive linemen in this new recruiting class. Carson Green came from the mid-year signing day. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the offensive line. But that's the biggest thing that I think that new coach Matt Campbell will have to work on. Last season at Toledo, where Matt Campbell was with most of his coaching staff, they had to do the exact same thing. They had to rebuild the offensive line. So it's going to be interesting what they do there. Another big storyline was the quarterbacks. We got a few new quarterbacks. Zeb Noland, the incoming freshman, they got him on mid-year signing day. Joe Lanning's going in as a favorite. But, Brian, what did you see from some of the quarterbacks today?
Yeah, the quarterbacks, I mean, kind of the two favorite ones coming into spring football was Joel Lanning, who's returning as right now, quote unquote, the favorite to win the spot. But you also have Zeb Noland, who's who looked really good for the hour that we got to see him. And I know Luke and I were kind of talking about it at practice, but Zeb can throw the ball. He threw one ball to Alan Lazard, and it was on the dime, and it was probably about a 40-yard pass, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And so, I think Joel Lanning's going to have some competition to earn that quarterback spot. But you also have Kyle Kempt, who's coming in. He played at Oregon State. He's from Ohio, so he has a good relationship with Coach Campbell, and he actually was trying to get recruited to Toledo, but decided to go to Oregon State. But now he's transferred to Iowa State. But should be a really fun time to see these three quarterbacks kind of competing really hard throughout the spring. I think the spring game in April is going to be interesting to see who actually stands out amongst the three to get that spot, because Joel Lanning started a little bit last year, but Sam Richardson was kind of the quarterback, and then Joel kind of stepped in towards the end of the year. So, he doesn't really have his permanent ground on being the returning quarterback. So it's kind of up in the air right now. But for right now, it seems like Joel Lanning's got the spot, and Zeb and Kyle are going to have to work really hard to get that.
Yeah, another guy that they were really high on was Dominique DeLira. He said he's actually surprised him. He redshirted last season. He's gonna be probably a contributor this spring to see how he does, I guess.
He looked really good at practice today.
All the quarterbacks look good.
He was throwing the ball pretty far for someone that not many people know about.
Yeah. And it's a Rhodes recruit, which a lot of Campbell doesn't seem like he's been high on a lot of Rhodes recruits, but he's high on this guy. And then another guy you can't forget about is Jacob Park, who's going to be coming in next fall, 2016 recruit. He was a 4-star out of high school. He was going to go to Ohio State, decided to go to community college, and he's a 3-star out of community college. So you got to wonder why he didn't go to Ohio State, but it's also an intriguing guy to look at.
Yeah.
So another storyline was Mike Warren, obviously coming off one of the best seasons as a freshman. I think he had the most rushing yards in the nation as a freshman, but also in Iowa State history. He had a historical season last year. But this season it's going to be a lot different, Matt Campbell says. He's going to be, instead of being the hunted, instead of being the hunterer, he's going to be the hunted, just because the notoriety he gained across the nation. Defenses are going to strategize against him, is what Campbell's essentially saying. So it's going to take a lot of mental capability, a lot of toughness for him to keep up the success he's had, especially as a freshman. He's got 3 more years, so teams are going to figure him out. He's got to adjust.
And especially when you have young quarterbacks like Joel Lanning and Kyle and Zeb. I mean, they're going to target Mike Warren because he's the running back, and so if you can stop the run, more than likely you can stop the pass because these quarterbacks are young. So Joel and Kyle and Zeb are going to have to step up to the plate starting in the fall to help out Mike Mike Warren, and as well as the Iowa State football team, because defense can win you ball games, but you do need an offense, and these quarterbacks have to step up.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. I think the biggest part about the running back position that is going to be interesting to see in the spring is how the depth works out. Mike Warren's obviously going to start, and he's going to get the majority of carries, but I don't think he can get the same amount of carries he got last year and hold up. It was a lot of carries. So they lost Joshua Thomas in the offseason. They lost Tyler Brown. Both their probably the second and third string running backs if they stayed, probably because of the coaching change. That's what happens. But it looks like Sheldon Croney Jr., who's recovering from hand surgery, could be a backup running back guy. I've also heard rumors that he might be moving to defense, so that's interesting. Another guy that is interesting is Mitchell Harder, who's a walk-on, but he's really impressed the coaching staff from what Campbell said. So it's something to keep an eye on is the depth rather than, and we all know Mike Warren's a good running back. It's going to be more of the depth. So let's move on to defense now. Brian, we were talking today on the sidelines, and you saw someone that really stood out to you, and it's someone that, I expect that would stand out.
Yeah, so as for defense, it seems like there's been a lot of change with, new coaches, new staff, new quarterbacks, a lot of new players that Coach Campbell has brought into Iowa State. And the one true Iowa Stater that has been here for a long time has been Kamari Cotton-Moya, who's a safety for Iowa State. He's been up and down just due to injury. He's got to stay healthy, but today he was a complete leader throughout the hour that we got to see him. He was helping a lot of the younger guys with different formations, different schemes, different strategies. Was asking a lot of questions to Coach Campbell and his defensive coaches to make sure he knew what was going on, because he still has to learn a whole new formation because Coach Campbell is coming in, and it's not Paul Rhodes style anymore. So I think when it comes to Cotton-Moya, as long as he can stay healthy, because this hamstring injury got him last year for half the season. So hopefully he can stay healthy. He's a redshirt junior, so he's got a couple more years left. But if he is the Cotton-Moya of the past, where he was the freshman of the year, Big 12 defensive freshman of the year, you could easily see him being a big effect in the Big 12 conference for safeties. And I think it's going to be a fun year for him. Hopefully he stays healthy, because I know talking to Campbell today, he kind of is relying on Cotton-Moya to be that leader this year, especially him being here for so many years as an Iowa Stater.
Yeah, and another thing about the defense is they're kind of experimenting with Johnner Jones. He was a nickelback last year, fitted in the 3-4 defense that Iowa State ran. But they're moving him to cornerback. Looks like an experimental thing. They like his length. Not really his. He's not really a speedy guy because he used to be a linebacker back in high school. So he's kind of went from linebacker to kind of a cornerback role. Now he's going to safety role. Now he's going to a cornerback. So it's kind of interesting the path he's taken. But yeah, so they're going with the length there. It's kind of experimental, like I said. So it's not going to be for sure. We also learned a couple other things just to round off this podcast here. A couple things with injuries. Jacob Dunning and Quan West, a couple players who've been riddled by injuries in their career. It looks like they're taking medical hardships this year, so they won't be with the team. But they are still in school, so it's not like they're not going anywhere. But Quan West, that's the end of his career. He's a senior, so
hopefully he can lead the team a little bit.
Yeah, maybe on the sideline, but yeah, that's the end of his career. Jacob Dunning's obviously he missed all of his almost all of last season because of an injury. So
and Levi Peters just left. He's done with his football career because of injuries.
Yep, injuries seem to be taking a toll.
Yeah, especially on the older guys.
Definitely a football thing, but yeah. And then another Trevor Ryan looks like he's gonna be moving to wide receiver. He played running back last season a little bit. He was kind of a hybrid, but it looks like he's gonna be moving back to wide receiver. So I think
as for the next time we get to see Iowa State football is Tuesday the 22nd, and that'll be pro day. So we'll be able to see some of the guys that some of the players might surprise us and kind of get noticed. But other than that, we'll have a podcast for you coming after spring break with pro day, and hopefully we'll be able to get the spring game coming up ahead pretty soon. So.
Yeah, and that's April 16th, so it's free admission.
Coming quick.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for listening, Cyclone football fans, and we'll be back in a couple weeks.
Have a great weekend.